What if the supernatural entity terrorizing your family wasn't actually trying to haunt you? What if it was just using your house to hide because it was running from something much, much worse? Tonight, we dive into a paranormal civil war that violently spilled over into a human home, resulting in one of the most terrifying, unexplainable possessions ever recorded. What is up, guys? Welcome back to Shadows Prevails. Whether you are tuning in from right here in the States or watching from anywhere else across the globe, I want to send my greetings and love to all of you. I hope you're all doing great and staying safe. As always, I am your host, and I am here to share a truly terrifying encounter with you today. If you want to experience the genuine, raw feeling of fear, you are in the exact right place. Stick around with us, all right, my friends. In today's episode, we are going to share the final segment of a massive, ongoing incident. Previously, we broadcasted the Blood Pact, Part 1. Today, I have brought you the Blood Pact Part 2, the second and absolute final conclusion to this nightmare. And honestly, I think you guys are going to find today's episode absolutely mind-blowing. So, let's get right into the story. But first, I want to reintroduce the person who sent this in. His name is Rocky. He lives in Karachi, Pakistan. Now, Karachi is an incredibly ancient city, and a lot of deep history has been written across its lands. You guys might have noticed, or maybe you've even wondered, why do I constantly tell stories originating from Pakistan or India? Well, the reason is simple. When these terrifying supernatural events occurred, or were actively happening, there were witnesses. And many of those people who became the living witnesses to these dark times are still alive today. Some have passed away, sure, but a lot of them are still here. I specifically get these stories from people in my community, individuals who live in those regions. I gather their data, I communicate with them directly, and that is how I source these true encounters. So, if you have heard of a true paranormal event, or if you have experienced something horrifying yourself in your own neighborhood, please share it with me. I will feature your story right here on the channel. Alright, let's do a quick recap. In the first half of the last episode, we learned how a man lost absolutely everything he owned while gambling, and ended up falling into a horrifying, life-threatening trap. We learned how a cursed coin somehow physically entered his body. And this coin, it would literally move around. It would shift from one part of his flesh to another, crawling under his skin. And hidden inside this phenomenon was the terrifying dark illusion of a specific class of entities known as the Gharujat Jinn. Where we left off in the last episode was this. A local cleric, or a spiritual healer, had used his own bound entity, a ghoul like Pishak Jinn, to gather information. Later, they attempted to summon the entity into a medium, a man with a Libra astrological sign, whose body was sensitive to the spirit world. But instead, the Gharujat Jinn manifested and proudly announced that they had slaughtered the cleric's Pishak Jinn. Now, what happens next? If you haven't listened to the previous episode, I highly recommend you pause this, go to our Horror Night playlist, and listen to the Blood Pact Part 1. For those who have already heard the first part, today's episode is going to be incredibly intense. But if you haven't, please listen to the first part so you can fully understand the sheer scale of the nightmare in this finale. So, we are going right back to the exact moment we left off in the last episode. The medium, the Libra man, suddenly collapsed onto the dirt floor. The cleric tried to intervene. He really tried to do something, but he couldn't. He was paralyzed. He just lay there in his designated resting spot in the room, staring at the ceiling, thinking out loud. He looked at everyone in the room and said, "A jinn as incredibly powerful as a Gharujat is telling us that they are in danger. But what could that danger possibly be? What on earth could make a Gharujat Jinn run for its life?" The next morning, as the cleric was getting ready to pack up and leave, Masood's wife broke down. She threw herself at the cleric's feet, grabbing his legs, crying and begging, "Please, master, I am begging you, try to save my husband and my baby." The cleric's heart completely melted. But he was powerless. There was literally nothing he could do against a force this strong. However, he handed them an address. He told them, "Listen, this man is our Grand Master. He is over 80 years old. He actually gave up doing this kind of spiritual warfare a long time ago. So, go to his place and mention my name. There is a very high chance he will refuse you, but you must keep trying. You have to beg him." The cleric explained that when a human being passes 78 years of age, they naturally lose their physical strength, and their capacity to endure the sheer physical and mental trauma of an exorcism fades away. He had lost his physical power, which is why he stopped. So, the cleric said, there is no logical reason for him to agree. But if he decides to risk his life in his final years, he might just do it. Explain everything to him. With those final words, the cleric said his goodbyes and left. That very night, all hell broke loose at Masood's house. A freak, unnatural storm descended on their home. The wind was howling at hurricane speeds, and the rain was pouring down violently. And outside, right outside their walls, it sounded like there were massive footsteps. Heavy, stomping footsteps. Then, the sounds of a brutal fight broke out. The sounds of a violent struggle. It sounded like massive bodies were wrestling, picking each other up, and slamming each other into the solid dirt. You know that heavy, sickening thud sound when a huge body hits the ground? Thud. Thud. It sounded exactly like that. Inside the house, they were all hiding in one room. Masood, his father, and his brother-in-law were huddled together on one bed. Masood's daughter, his wife, and his sister were trembling on another bed. They were absolutely terrified. Suddenly, with a deafening explosive crack, the heavy wooden door of the house was smashed wide open. The door literally broke off its hinges and fell to the floor. The violent wind rushed in and instantly blew out their only source of light, a small oil lamp. Pitch black. The room was completely submerged in darkness. And right there, in the pitch black of the room, they saw two massive, shadowy silhouettes. They were still physically fighting, punching and tearing at each other as they rolled right into the middle of the family's bedroom. Seeing these towering shadow entities violently brawling in the dark, two of the women instantly passed out from pure shock. Masood and the other male family members were so paralyzed with fear that they scrambled and dove underneath the wooden beds to hide. And right at that moment, hiding under the bed, Masood's arm started to burn in absolute agony. From underneath the bed, Masood started screaming out loud, writhing in pain as whatever was inside his flesh began to violently react. Eventually, the two shadow entities brawled their way back out of the room and vanished into the storm. Later that night, the family finally managed to light the oil lamp again. They just sat there, huddled around the small flame, completely traumatized. Masood's father looked at his family, his face pale, and said, "Tomorrow morning, we have to go to that Grand Master, because if we don't, I don't think a single one of us is going to survive." As soon as the terrifying night passed and the sun finally came up, the family wasted no time. They immediately traveled to the Grand Master's house. When they arrived, they approached the old master and explained their situation. They said, "Grand Master, the other cleric, the one who was trying to help us, he sent us to you." The Grand Master looked at them, shaking his head. "Listen to me, my children. I do not do this kind of work anymore. You have come to the wrong place. There are plenty of other spiritual healers out there. Go to them." But Masood's father and his brother-in-law were desperate. They absolutely refused to leave his side. The Grand Master stopped talking to them and started walking toward the local mosque. But the family? They didn't move. They just sat right there in his courtyard, waiting. The Grand Master led the evening prayers, finished the final Isha prayer of the night, and walked back to his house. And when he walked through his gate, he saw that Masood's family was still sitting exactly where he had left them. Seeing their absolute desperation, the Grand Master's heart finally softened. He looked at them and sighed. "You must have felt very hurt by my words earlier today," he said. "The truth is, there is a very specific reason why I no longer involve myself in these dark practices. But let me look into this. Let me investigate first and see what can actually be done. Then I will sit down with you. For tonight, you are my guests." The next morning, after the master had provided them with dinner the night before and a place to sleep, he arranged breakfast for everyone. After they finished eating, he sat them down for a serious conversation. "My age is advanced," the Grand Master explained. "If I still had my youth, or my physical strength, I would not hesitate to fight for you. I would try everything in my power, even if there was only a 1% chance of success. But I did some investigating last night." He leaned in closer. "I have a son. He teaches at a religious seminary in Turkey. He actually started his journey back home 3 days ago. He should arrive by tomorrow, or the day after. My son, he inherited my gift. He is just like me. When he gets here, we will see how far we can push back against this entity. In the meantime, I have dispatched some highly powerful, protective jinns to guard your property. They have taken positions at a distance. If any danger approaches your house, they will immediately step in. Now, pack your things. You are coming with me back to your house." The master warned them, "We cannot predict when things will escalate. They came to take your baby last night. We have to be ready." With those words, they all set off to return to Masood's house. By the time they arrived back at the property, it was already getting close to evening. The sun was beginning to set. Inside the house, Masood's sister was crying out of sheer stress, while Masood's wife was sitting quietly, holding their baby in her arms. Suddenly, Masood walked into the room out of nowhere. He looked directly at his wife and said, "Give me the baby. Hand him over to me." Right at that moment, the baby had just soiled his clothes. So, Masood's wife looked up at him and said, "Just wait a second. Let me change his clothes and clean him up first." The absolute second those words left her mouth, Masood lunged forward. He violently grabbed his wife's face, covering her mouth with his hand. His grip tight and aggressive. He growled at her, "Didn't I tell you to give him to me? Give him here." And right at that exact terrifying second, another Masood walked through the bedroom door. Masood's wife took one look at the second Masood, looked back at the Masood grabbing her face, and her brain completely short-circuited. Right before her eyes rolled back into her head, she screamed, "Oh my God, what am I looking at?" and instantly passed out cold on the floor. Hearing the piercing scream, Masood's sister came sprinting out of the kitchen. She ran into the room and stopped dead in her tracks. She was staring at absolute madness. The two identical Masoods were now brutally physically fighting each other in the middle of the room. And as if that wasn't insane enough, from out of nowhere, a third Masood rushed into the room and jumped right into the violent brawl. Guys, just take a second to process this. Imagine you are standing in your own home, and there are three identical versions of a family member, violently brawling with each other right in your front yard. Who is hitting who? Which one is the real Masood? No one in the house had any idea. Think about the sheer psychological terror of seeing three Masoods fighting. What would a normal human being even do in a situation like that? You would completely freeze out of pure fear. Masood's sister managed to snap out of it just long enough to run to the door. She slammed it shut, locked it, and pressed her face against the cracks in the window, watching the three men fight outside. She started screaming at the top of her lungs, "Help! Who is out there? Someone come quickly, hurry!" By the time the neighbors heard the screaming and started rushing toward the house, evening had fully set in. In the distance, the evening adhan, the Islamic call to prayer, began to echo from a nearby mosque. Now, in Islamic theology, it is heavily believed that malevolent entities, or evil jinns, cannot tolerate the sound of the adhan. They cannot remain in the area when it is being recited. And just like the stories say, the exact moment the call to prayer echoed through the air, all three of the fighting Masoods completely vanished. They just disappeared into thin air. A few minutes passed, and then the real Masood came walking up the path. He walked into the house, completely confused, and found his family in absolute hysterics. They frantically explained what had just happened. Masood looked at them, completely stunned, and said, "What are you talking about?" "I went out to get medicine. I literally told you I was leaving before I stepped out." Right in the middle of this chaos, the Grand Master and the other clerics arrived at the house. The family immediately ran up to the Master and told him everything: the three Masoods, the violent fight, the vanishing. The Grand Master's face turned completely serious. He looked at the family and said, "We cannot delay this any longer. We have to deal with these entities tonight." Without saying another word, the Grand Master walked into a separate room and locked the door behind him, isolating himself. Around 10 or 11 p.m. that night, the Master finally emerged from the room. He called the entire family together and delivered a chilling explanation. "Listen to me," he said. "Tonight a completely different Gharujat Jinn arrived at your house. Its goal was to steal the baby, but when it tried, another Gharujat Jinn intervened and physically stopped it. And one of the protective jinns that I assigned to guard this house also joined the fight. It shapeshifted, taking on Masood's exact physical form to combat the intruders." The Grand Master then took a wooden staff. He walked around the entire house, dragging the tip of the staff against the dirt, drawing a massive, continuous circle around the property. He looked at the family and ordered them, "Go inside the house, lock the doors, and do not, under any circumstances, step outside this room." The master then took Masood, and the two of them sat down outside in the open yard. The master was bypassing all the usual steps. He was going straight into the process of capturing and binding the jinn. By drawing that circle with his staff, the master had essentially cast an invisible magical net over the property. He created a supernatural illusion, an invisible cage. Any jinn that crossed that line and entered the property would be physically trapped. They would not be able to leave. With the trap set, the Grand Master began the Ruqya, the Islamic exorcism ritual. The Grand Master was fully prepared. He brought out an object that looked like a brass pot, placing it directly in front of him on the dirt. Then, he took a thick piece of cloth and completely covered Masood's head and face with it, tying it securely so Masood couldn't see anything. The exact moment the master tied the knot, Masood's arm flared up. The agonizing, burning pain returned instantly. The master began loudly reciting the Ruqya prayers, and with every verse he finished, he struck the brass pot with his wooden stick. Clang, and then, the atmosphere completely shattered. The sky above them seemed to literally tremble as a violent, unnatural storm erupted out of nowhere. The wind howled with such terrifying force that a massive tree standing right next to the outdoor kitchen suddenly snapped in half. The heavy trunk crashed down, completely obliterating the kitchen, smashing everything inside to pieces. And then came the noise. An overwhelming chaos of sound filled the air. It sounded exactly like the panicked, terrified screams of a massive crowd of people. You know that specific sound when a large group of people is suddenly caught in a disaster and everyone is screaming at once? It sounded exactly like that, but there was no one there. The sky turned an unnatural, pitch-black color. Complete darkness swallowed the entire area around the house. The deafening screams and the chaotic yelling continued for what felt like an eternity. Suddenly, the speed of the hurricane force winds increased even more. The Grand Master raised his voice, shouting his prayers over the roaring storm, striking the pot harder and faster. Inside the house, the family was huddled in absolute terror, peeking through the small gaps and cracks in the bamboo walls, watching the nightmare unfold in their yard. This absolute chaos raged on for a long time, and then the sounds shifted. It no longer sounded like a panicked crowd. It sounded like a brutal, physical war. A violent fight broke out right on top of the house's tin roof. Imagine the sound of several massive feral cats violently tearing each other apart on a metal roof, screeching, scratching, and slamming into the metal. That is exactly what it sounded like, but multiplied by 100. Suddenly, amidst the chaos, something manifested. A towering figure stepped out of the shadows and stood directly in front of the Grand Master. It didn't look like a person. It looked like a dense, solid block of pure darkness, an entity formed entirely out of condensed shadows. The dark figure stood over the master, and in a deep, booming, incredibly serious voice, it began to beg him. "Master," the entity pleaded, "you have absolutely no idea what is about to happen. Please, I am begging you, release my jinns." The lives of millions of jinns and humans are directly tied to this exact moment. A single wrong decision from you right now will result in the slaughter of millions. Other jinns from our race have arrived here. They are going to take this baby, and they are going to execute him. You do not understand the scale of what you are interfering with. Please, I beg of you, break the circle and let us go. But the Grand Master refused. He was not going to back down. The jinn's voice grew even more desperate. "Master, you cannot even begin to comprehend the mistake you are making. Our enemies, They want this. They want us to be trapped by you so they can win. Listen to me. I will tell you everything. I swear to you. If you do not hand us over to them, if you just let us go, I will reveal the entire truth to you." Hearing these words, the Grand Master's mind started racing. A totally different thought crossed his mind. Gharujat Jinns are notoriously arrogant, violent, and immensely proud entities. They do not beg. They never plead with humans like this. So, what was really going on here? Why was this incredibly powerful entity lowering itself to beg a human cleric for its freedom? The Master quickly deduced that there must be a massive civil war happening between two rival factions within the Gharujat race. And if the Master kept this specific group trapped inside his circle, he was essentially handing the victory over to their enemies. Realizing the massive supernatural politics at play, the Grand Master made a split-second decision in his mind. He was going to release them. The Master looked at the entity and verbally commanded the release of all the trapped jinns. But as he freed them, he called out specific jinns by their names, commanding them, "You and you, guard this baby. Protect this child at all costs." But just as the words left his mouth, the Grand Master let out a blood-curdling, agonizing scream. Inside the house, the family froze. Hearing the Master scream like that, they were absolutely convinced that he had just been killed. Suddenly, the roaring wind stopped. The screams faded. Everything around the house fell into a dead, terrifying silence. Then, someone knocked on the heavy wooden door. A voice from outside called out, "Do not be afraid. It is safe now. Please, step outside, move the Master and Masood into another room, and then leave them be." The family was paralyzed with fear. No one wanted to open that door. But knowing the Master might be dying out there, they forced themselves to do it. They carefully stepped out, grabbed the unconscious Masood and the groaning Grand Master, moved them into a separate bedroom, and quickly left them alone. The next morning, as soon as the sun rose, the family rushed into the Master's room. They found the Grand Master writhing on the bed, groaning in absolute agony. Masood's father rushed to his side and asked, "Master, please tell us, what actually happened out there last night?" The Master, breathing heavily, replied, "My son has finally arrived in the country from Turkey. I have sent word for him to come here immediately. He should arrive by this evening. When he gets here, we will finally uncover the truth behind all these mysterious riddles the Jinn was talking about. Honestly, I am just as confused as you are. I do not understand what the real secret is here." As the Master was speaking, he kept clutching the right side of his chest, wincing in pain. Noticing this, Masood's father asked, "Master, what is wrong with your chest?" The Master looked at him, his face pale. "You want to see? Look for yourself." The Grand Master slowly unbuttoned the top half of his tunic. The family gasped. Right there, on the right side of the Master's chest, was a massive, swollen lump. It looked exactly like the swelling from a giant bee sting, but the skin around it was bright red and heavily inflamed. "Master, what in God's name is that?" they asked. "I don't know," the Master whispered, his voice trembling with pain. "But I am in excruciating agony. It feels like someone injected pure, concentrated venom straight into my body. But we will know all the answers tonight." Meanwhile, Masood was still completely unconscious on his bed. The Master looked at the family and said, "Please, leave me alone to rest for a while. Go and take care of Masood." By evening, just as the Master predicted, his son finally arrived at Masood's house. Now, you might be wondering, How did the son know exactly where Masood lived? It is highly likely that his own jinns guided him to the exact location. Plus, Masood was a very well-known rice merchant in the area, so most people in the surrounding villages knew exactly where his house was. As soon as the son walked in and saw his father's condition, he was deeply alarmed. He rushed over and asked, "Dad, how did this happen?" The Grand Master explained everything that occurred during the Ruqya the night before, but by now, the massive swelling on the Master's chest had gotten worse. The bright red skin had turned completely pitch black. The son looked at the black mark in absolute shock. "Dad," he said, "what kind of entity is here that forced you to call me all the way back home? In my entire life, I have never not once seen a jinn powerful enough to cross your protective boundary and physically harm you. Who is this jinn?" The Master simply looked at his son and said, "When night falls, my boy, you will learn everything." When night finally fell, the family repeated the exact same lockdown procedure. Everyone was ordered to stay locked inside one room, while the Grand Master, his son, and Masood prepared for the ritual. The Grand Master, fighting through excruciating chest pain, forced himself to sit next to his son. Masood sat directly in front of them. The son immediately began reciting the Ruqya, attempting to force the entity to manifest inside Masood's body. But no matter how intensely he prayed, the burning pain in Masood's arm became too much for him to endure. After fighting the pain for as long as he could, Masood's eyes rolled back, and he lost consciousness once again. He had been passing out and waking up in cycles for days now, unable to handle the sheer physical trauma of the spiritual warfare happening inside him. The room fell dead silent. Everyone was waiting. Suddenly, out of absolutely nowhere, a dense, shadowy silhouette materialized in the room. It stepped forward and sat heavily on the floor, right in front of the Grand Master and his son. The entity looked at them and spoke. "Peace be upon you," it said, its voice deep and resonant. "I want to thank you. If you had not shown us mercy and released us yesterday, we would have remained trapped, and eventually, we would have been killed. We would have been captured and slaughtered by our own brothers, by jinns, from our very own race." The Grand Master looked at the dark figure and asked his questions. "You belong to the Gharujat race, one of the most arrogant and powerful jinn races in existence. Why did you beg a human for help? Why are you here? What is your obsession with this innocent human baby? Why are you torturing an ordinary man like Masood? What do you actually want? And why did you manifest in front of us as a shadow, instead of taking over Masood's body like a normal jinn?" The entity sat in silence for a long time before finally answering. "How could I possibly enter his body, Master?" the jinn replied. "My Emperor, my ultimate master, is currently residing inside this man's flesh. As long as he is in there, no other jinn can enter. And the enemy jinns hunting us, they do not even know that my master is hiding inside this specific human. Yesterday, when you trapped us, I could have easily killed you without begging. I had the power to do it. But I chose to plead with you because we were in absolute danger. I was forced to beg because I have to protect my master at all costs." The Grand Master was confused. "Wait, what do you mean, your master? I thought you were the leader of your squad?" "I am a commander," the jinn clarified, "but I am not the Emperor. Listen to me carefully, and I will tell you everything." And then, the jinn began to reveal a terrifying ancient history. Many years ago the Jinn began. Our previous emperor had 2 children. They were twin brothers. Their names were Calren and Chiron. As they grew up, they learned the dark arts. It is customary for every single Jinn in our race to learn black magic from birth. The twins were tested on their magical abilities frequently. During their very first major trial, Chiron emerged victorious. Calren was defeated. From that exact moment, a deep, dark jealousy took root in Calren's heart. He became obsessed with the throne. He desperately wanted to be the next emperor. You see, we Gharujat Jinns are inherently short-tempered, arrogant, and incredibly aggressive. But these 2 brothers were entirely different from one another. Calren was obsessed with dark magic. From a very young age, he began secretly studying highly forbidden, terrifying forms of black magic, spells that were strictly banned for someone his age. Calren was fiercely stubborn, and his nature was dark. Now, by human standards, all Gharujat Jinns might seem evil, but even by our standards, Calren was going too far. To secure his path to the throne, Calren used his forbidden magic to dominate and control other Jinns, bending them to his will. The hunger for power grew rapidly between the 2 brothers, and their mastery over dark magic became lethal. Eventually, their rivalry turned into pure hatred. When they reached adulthood, a grand battle of power was held to decide the heir. They fought using devastating black magic and brutal physical combat. But the fight was a perfect draw. They were completely equal in strength. Now, unlike other entities, the Gharujat do not have separate tribes or clans. We are one, massive, unified race. Seeing that both of his sons were equally powerful, our emperor made a decision. He would crown both of them as co-emperor. However, Chiron made a fatal mistake. He fell in love with a female Jinn from an entirely different race, and he brought her home, announcing his intention to marry her. For the Gharujat, allowing an outsider into our domain is strictly forbidden. The emperor was devastated and furious. It was unacceptable. Gharujat Jinns do not mix their bloodlines with outsiders. We consider our race to be completely separate and superior. But despite his anger, the emperor reluctantly accepted the marriage against his own wishes. But Calren saw his golden opportunity. He immediately started poisoning his father's mind against Chiron. He whispered lies and fears into the emperor's ear. He said, "Look at what he is doing. He is marrying an outsider. If he becomes emperor, he will destroy our pure bloodline. If our people see the emperor mixing with other races, they will do the same. Soon, they will bring humans into our realm and marry them. Our pure ancient lineage will become a hybrid weakened race. We will lose our raw power. Entire Jinn races have gone extinct because of this exact behavior. We cannot allow our race to die out." Calren's manipulation worked perfectly. The emperor was deeply influenced by these fears. Without warning, he made a public verbal declaration. Calren would be the sole emperor after him. When Chiron confronted his father, asking why he had broken his promise of a co-rulership, the emperor refused to answer him. He could no longer even look at Chiron without feeling disgust. But Calren's true nature quickly revealed itself. Once he was declared the sole heir, his arrogance became unbearable. He treated everyone like dirt, including his own father, the current emperor. The disrespect was so blatant and continuous that the emperor, filled with rage and regret, changed his mind yet again. He announced that he was returning to his original plan. Both brothers would rule. To make this official, the emperor took the royal stone. This is a highly sacred, magical gemstone that rests on the head of the Gharujat Emperor. Whoever possesses this stone is recognized as the undisputed ruler. Since there was only one stone, the Emperor used his magic to split it perfectly in half, giving one piece to each brother. But almost immediately after splitting the stone, the Emperor fell mysteriously and violently ill. Our race possesses incredibly powerful, terrifying healers who know the cures to the most lethal supernatural diseases and curses in existence. But even they could do absolutely nothing. The Emperor was dying. I was personally assigned to investigate the cause of this sudden illness. Initially, I suspected Charon. I thought he might have cursed his father out of anger for being disowned earlier. I spent a long time acting as a spy, tailing Charon in secret. But I found nothing. He was innocent. Then, one day, I noticed Calren sneaking out alone. He didn't take a single bodyguard with him, which was highly suspicious. I followed him. Calren's shape shifted into a human form and disappeared into a remote, isolated mountain. When I crept closer, I saw another human already waiting for him in the mountain. I instantly recognized what this human was. He was a dark sorcerer, a practitioner of incredibly dark, human black magic. I hid in the shadows and listened to their conversation. And then, I heard something that made my blood run cold. I heard Calren say to the human sorcerer, "The faster the old man dies, the faster I become the sole emperor. And once I am on the throne, I will make you incredibly powerful. Don't you see? The old fool just refuses to die." I realized the horrifying truth. Calren had hired a human sorcerer to cast a lethal death curse on his own father. I immediately rushed back and told the Emperor everything. Hearing that his own son had orchestrated his assassination broke the Emperor's heart. With his dying breath, the Emperor called an assembly and made one final, desperate declaration. Calren is stripped of his title. From this day forward, Charon is your one and only Emperor. The dark entity sitting in front of the Grand Master continued its story, its voice heavy with anger and sorrow. But the Emperor's final declaration, it meant absolutely nothing. Why? Because the Emperor no longer possessed the royal stone. He had already split it in two and given it to his sons. Without the complete stone, his final command lacked absolute authority. And so, a brutal civil war erupted between the two brothers. Our entire race, a single unified people, was violently split into two opposing armies. One faction fought for Charon, and the other swore loyalty to Calren. They slaughtered each other in the streets. And right in the middle of this bloodshed, our Emperor finally succumbed to the dark magic. He died, murdered by the human sorcerer hired by his own son. Calren immediately took the human sorcerer under his personal protection. You must understand, a human sorcerer who is powerful enough to successfully assassinate the Emperor of the Gharujat Jinn is no ordinary human. This sorcerer possessed a terrifying, ancient level of dark magic. Calren knew this, and he kept the sorcerer close. I chose my side. I pledged my loyalty to Charon. The kingdom was completely fractured. Whenever a judgment needed to be passed, it required the agreement of both emperors. But their decisions were always exact opposites. If Charon said east, Calren said west. They refused to acknowledge each other's authority. This stalemate went on for a very long time. But Calren was growing impatient. He began plotting, looking for a way to seize total control. One day, Calren's forces captured the siblings of Charon's wife. When Charon's wife found out, she rushed to Calren's court and demanded to know why they were imprisoned. She asked, What is their crime? Calren looked at her with pure disgust and said, "They dared to enter our kingdom without permission. For that, they will be executed." Sharon's wife pleaded with him. "They are my brothers and sisters. They just came to visit me. You are going to kill them for that? Are they not your relatives now too?" But Calren just laughed. He viciously insulted her, and he spat vile, degrading insults at her entire race. When Sharon heard about this, he snapped. He launched a massive, direct assault on Calren's stronghold. The battle was catastrophic. The devastation was so severe that Calren was ultimately forced to release the prisoners, but a deep, burning resentment cemented itself in his heart. Sometime later, Sharon's wife gave birth to a baby boy, and Calren finally saw the perfect opportunity to destroy his brother forever. Calren went to his human sorcerer and had him craft an incredibly complex, highly deceptive death curse. Through a web of deceit, Calren managed to trick Sharon's own sister-in-law into feeding the cursed item to Sharon. The moment Calren ingested it, he collapsed into a deep, supernatural coma. When Calren finally regained consciousness, his world had been destroyed. He woke up to the horrifying news that Calren had kidnapped his newborn son. Blinded by rage and panic, Calren took his personal army and launched a desperate assault on the hidden mountain where the human sorcerer resided, knowing Calren had taken the baby there. But when Sharon arrived, Calren gave him an ultimatum. Calren told him, "Step down, renounce your title as emperor, and give me your half of the royal stone. If you refuse, I will kill your son right here, right now." Sharon was a fierce, terrifying Gharujat warrior, but he was also a father. Out of pure, unconditional love for his child, he surrendered. He handed over his half of the royal stone. But Calren is a monster. He had absolutely no intention of honoring the deal. The moment Calren possessed the fully assembled royal stone, he used its immense power, combined with the blood of Charin's infant son, to cast a horrific binding spell. Right there in the mountain, Calren forcefully ripped Charin's soul from his body and trapped him inside a cursed coin. When Calren turned around, fully intending to murder the infant anyway, the human sorcerer suddenly stopped him. The sorcerer looked at the baby and delivered a chilling prophecy. He said, "Do not kill the child yet. This boy, he possesses an incredibly rare latent power, born from the union of two completely different Jinn bloodlines. If you keep him alive and sacrifice him in a dark ritual on his 15th birthday, you will absorb a power that is virtually unmatched in this universe. You will gain the combined strength of millions of jinns in an instant. You will be able to wipe out entire armies with a single thought. No matter how ancient or powerful a jinn is, they will be forced to bow before you. You will attain a level of power that rivals the devil himself." When I, hiding in the shadows, heard this prophecy, sheer terror washed over me. Calren immediately began his purge. He hunted down every single jinn who had supported Calren. He captured them and imprisoned them in secret, barren locations deep within the deserts. But before I fled the mountain, I managed to overhear the human sorcerer explain exactly how Charin's curse could be broken. That cursed coin, my emperor is trapped inside it. That is why I told you earlier that my master is here, inside this human. I, along with a small squad of loyal soldiers, managed to steal the coin and the royal stone, and we fled into hiding. Calren does not know where we are. His armies have been hunting us relentlessly. Occasionally his patrols find us, a bloody skirmish breaks out, and we are forced to run and hide again. It has been an endless, exhausting game of cat and mouse. Calren also captured Charon's wife. He then marched his army into her homeland and systematically slaughtered her entire race, leaving it in ruins. She is still being held captive by Calren to this day. And Calren's ultimate plan? He intends to execute the blood sacrifice of the boy, right in front of his mother's eyes. I brought the coin here, the Jinn explained to the Grand Master. I traveled across realms. I consulted the most ancient, powerful Jinns and human clerics, but they all gave me the same answer. There is only one way to break the curse on the coin. It requires a dark ritual using the royal stone and the blood of Charon's own son. But Charon's son is locked away in Calren's impenetrable fortress. We have no idea where he is. So, we took a desperate gamble. We cast a highly volatile dark spell on the cursed coin itself. The spell couldn't break the curse, but it offered a tiny glimmer of hope. It allowed Charon's soul to tether itself to a human host. But it came with a heavy restriction. Charon cannot control the human. He is reduced to nothing more than a silent observer inside the human's flesh. He sees what the human sees. He hears what the human hears. And he feels the exact same pain the human feels. So, we began inserting this coin into various human bodies. But we couldn't just choose anyone. The spell required the human's subconscious permission. If the human had even a single shred of fear or hesitation in their heart at the moment of possession, the coin would reject them. And even when it worked, the sheer crushing dark energy of the coin is too much for a normal human to bear. Most of the humans we infected died instantly. Others suffered agonizing deaths a few days later. But if a human manages to survive the coin, and if that human has a child while the coin is inside them, that child's soul is forever altered. The child is born with the spiritual signature of both a human and a Jinn. We searched for years. We found a few suitable hosts, but the babies always died immediately after birth. They couldn't survive the spiritual strain. But then, 2 years ago, we found a man named Fayez. The coin accepted him, and his wife gave birth to a healthy baby. We were overjoyed. We guarded his wife day and night. But on the 40th night after the baby's birth, Calren's elite assassins tracked us down. They ambushed us, tore the baby from its mother, and slaughtered it. If that baby had lived, we could have used its mixed blood to finally free Charon. But because Calren's men killed it, we failed. And now, we have Masood. And we are going to take Masood's baby. If we do not take this child, we are all doomed. The dark entity stared directly at the Grand Master, its voice resolute and unwavering. We are going to take Masood's baby. Because if we do not, Calren will become unstoppable. We have to stop him from completing the sacrifice of Charon's son. And the only way to do that is to use Masood's baby to break the curse on the coin. We will take this child, and we will perform the dark ritual to extract its blood. And yes, because this baby possesses both human and Jinn energy, the sheer trauma of the dark magic will be too much for its small body to handle. The baby will die. But we have no other choice. My master must be freed, Calren must be killed, and my master's son must be saved. The Grand Master listened to the entire horrifying story in silence. Finally, he spoke, his voice filled with sorrow. This baby is completely innocent, he said. This human child has done absolutely nothing wrong. How can you justify killing an innocent baby? The Jinn leaned closer, its shadowy form flickering in the dim light. "Innocence?" the Jinn repeated, its voice laced with bitterness. "We have long lost the luxury of understanding what is right and what is wrong. Master, if your leader was trapped in a cursed prison, if your leader's child was about to be slaughtered right in front of its own mother's eyes, would you stop and worry about who is innocent? Would you? I don't understand your human morality. You humans cannot comprehend the things we have seen, so how can you expect us to understand your empathy? I have one goal, and one goal only. My emperor must be freed, and Calren must die. My master Charon is the only entity in existence powerful enough to kill Calren. The dark magic Calren wields, none of us can break it. Only Charon has that power, and for him to use it, he must be freed tonight." The Jinn then slowly turned its gaze toward the Grand Master's son. "And you?" the Jinn said. "That pain in your father's chest? That is no ordinary wound. It is a highly classified biological weapon used only by Calren's elite assassins. It is a specific type of venomous saliva. There is absolutely no cure for it in this world. Once it spreads from the right side of his chest over to the left side, the moment it touches his heart, your father will die. Yesterday, when you trapped us in your circle, one of Calren's assassins shape-shifted into a bee, bypassed your defenses, and injected that venom straight into your father's chest." Hearing this, the son's face went completely pale. Panic crept into his voice. "Then, what is the cure? How do I save him?" "There is only one cure," the Jinn replied coldly. "The saliva of my master. If Charon is freed from the coin, he can apply his saliva to the wound, and the venom will immediately neutralize. That is your only hope." The Grand Master took a deep breath, trying to process everything. He looked at Masood, who was still unconscious. "I understand all of this," the Master said. "But tell me one thing. Why does Masood's arm hurt so badly? What is actually happening inside his flesh?" "Whenever an enemy Jinn gets too close to Masood," the entity explained, "they are actually trying to attack my master, who is trapped inside him. When Charon senses an enemy approaching, he desperately tries to force his way out of Masood's body to defend himself. The coin violently shifts and tears through Masood's flesh, trying to escape. That is why Masood screams in agony. He is feeling the physical trauma of my master trying to break out of a human prison." The Grand Master looked at the Jinn, completely cornered. "Then, what do we do now? What is the way out of this?" "There is no way out," the Jinn stated bluntly. "Today is the 39th day since the baby was born. On the 41st night, we will come for the child." The Grand Master frowned. "Wait, what do you mean you're going to take the baby? You gave me your word. You promised that if I released you, you wouldn't take the child." The Jinn's eyes seemed to narrow in the darkness. "I gave you my word that I would tell you the truth. I never once promised that I wouldn't take the child. However, I will give you exactly 2 days. In these 2 days, if you and your son can somehow figure out an alternative way to break the curse and free my master, then we will not touch the child. We do not actually want to kill a human baby. We just need our emperor. But remember, you only have 2 days. You can try whatever human methods or prayers you want. But on the 41st night, if my master is still trapped inside that coin, we will take the baby, and we will not listen to any more of your pleas. I have explained our desperation. I have told you exactly what is at stake. So, do not look at us as the villains here. Yes, we are doing something evil, but to save my emperor, to save his son, and to save his wife. If I have to become the most evil entity in existence, then so be it. And with those chilling final words, the jinn vanished into thin air. The room was left in a heavy, suffocating silence. The Grand Master and his son sat there, their minds racing, desperately trying to figure out a solution. The jinn had made it perfectly clear. They would stop at absolutely nothing to save their emperor and his family. The son looked at his father, his eyes welling up with tears. "Dad, your life is on the line now too. I cannot let you die. I won't let that happen." He quickly gathered Masood's family into the room. He looked at them, his face exhausted but determined. "I came here to solve your family's nightmare," the son said. "But now, my own father's life is hanging in the balance. I honestly do not know how I am going to fix this, but we cannot lose faith. We will put our trust in the Almighty, and we will see what path opens up for us." With that, the son, the Grand Master, and Masood locked themselves inside a single secluded room. They stayed in that room for 2 entire days. The son had strictly instructed the family, "Do not knock. Do not call for us. No matter what you hear, leave us alone for these 2 days." 2 days slowly passed. The tension in the house was unbearable. Finally, on the evening of the 2nd day, the door slowly creaked open. The son walked out. He looked incredibly pale, completely drained of energy, and physically exhausted. He looked at the family and weakly asked, "Please, bring us some food." Masood's father quickly asked, "Where is the Grand Master? Where is Masood?" "They are inside," the son replied quietly. "They are both completely unconscious." After eating a few bites of food, the son sat down and began to explain what had happened behind those locked doors for the past 48 hours. For the last 2 days, the son began, "I have been pushing my mind and body to the absolute limit. I sent my most powerful jinns deep into the spiritual realm to gather any piece of information they could find. I desperately searched for an alternative way to free Charon, and I searched for a cure for the venom spreading toward my father's heart. But my jinns returned with nothing. They told me that a solution for this specific curse simply does not exist in their knowledge. I even sent messages to immensely powerful ancient entities. They all gave me the exact same answer. There is no alternative. There is no other way." But then, yesterday, a very specific message reached me. I was told about an incredibly revered, ancient, and highly respected jinn, a spiritual elder of immense power. I was told that, by the will of the Almighty, this elder might know a solution. But there was a catch. This elder jinn refuses to travel to anyone. It is considered highly disrespectful to summon an entity of his stature. If I wanted his help, I had to go to him. And I had to do it in person. The Grand Master's son continued his story, his voice trembling slightly as he recalled the experience. I was told that this ancient jinn never answers to summons. Kings, powerful sorcerers, and even other jinns have to travel to his domain if they want an audience. The only way to speak with him was to physically meet him. And I did. I managed to secure a meeting. Now, how the son actually traveled to the spiritual domain of this ancient jinn remains a mystery. It is highly believed that he used a method of supernatural transportation, provided by his own powerful jinns, physically moving his body into their realm. I followed the exact rituals and procedures my jinns taught me. The son explained. I went to a secluded spot, closed my eyes, and began to recite the ancient prayers. I stayed completely focused for what felt like hours. Suddenly, I heard a voice. It was a calm, resonant voice greeting me with peace, calling me by my exact name. I slowly opened my eyes. I was no longer sitting in the room. I was somewhere else entirely. I was in another realm. The ancient, revered Jinn was sitting before me. He looked at me and asked, "My son, what brings you here so suddenly? You command very powerful jinns of your own. Why did you feel the need to seek me out? Why did you go through such immense hardship to come to my domain?" I bowed my head respectfully and replied, "I did not want to disturb your peace, O Elder, but I have absolutely no other choice. This matter involves the life of my own father, the life of an innocent human child, a possessed man, and the lives of millions of jinns whose existence is currently hanging in the balance." The Elder Jinn's expression grew serious. "Speak," he said. "Tell me everything." I sat there and explained the entire situation to him. I told him about the cursed coin, the blood sacrifice, the venom in my father's chest, and the terrifying prophecy. But the exact moment I mentioned the name Calrin, the Elder Jinn's face changed. A deep, heavy look of concern washed over his ancient features. The Elder Jinn was quiet for a moment. Then, he spoke. "I have students," the Elder began. "They are Egyptian Ifrits. Now, while Ifrits are generally known to be one of the most dangerous and malevolent classes of jinns, my students are righteous. They follow the path of light, and through them, I have heard whispers of Calrin's terrifying atrocities. You must understand, there has been a bitter, violent blood feud between the Gharujat race and the Egyptian Ifrits for centuries. It has always been a ruthless competition for dominance. They absolutely despise each other. It's like a war between a snake and a mongoose. Whenever a Gharujat Jinn crosses paths with an Egyptian Ifrit, they kill them on sight. To the Gharujat, the Ifrits are the ultimate enemy. If Calrin successfully completes this blood sacrifice on his nephew's 15th birthday, it will unleash an unimaginable catastrophe. Calrin will absorb an unholy amount of power. He will become virtually unstoppable. I looked at the Elder in pure desperation. "Then what do we do?" I asked. "Please, tell me. The Almighty provides a solution for every crisis. There must be a way to stop this." The Elder Jinn closed his eyes and thought for a very long time. Finally, he looked at me and said, "There is one way. There is a man, an incredibly powerful, divinely blessed human saint. He possesses the spiritual authority to intervene in a matter this catastrophic. But I do not know his current location. He constantly wanders, moving from place to place, solving supernatural crises by the will of the Almighty. You must find this man. Your jinns should recognize him. Tell your jinns to search for the man known as Zikir Pagla. The moment you say that name, they will know exactly who you are looking for." The Elder Jinn then manifested a physical letter, a piece of parchment, and handed it to me. "If you find him," the Elder said, "give him this letter." The Elder Jinn then instructed me to close my eyes. I did as I was told, and the very next second, when I opened my eyes, I was right back here, sitting in the locked room in Masood's house. The son looked at the family, his face a mix of exhaustion and faint hope. "I immediately dispatched my jinns to track down Zikir Pagla," he said. "They are searching for him right now. We should have his location very soon." But the reality of their situation quickly settled back in. The Grand Master and Masood were still completely unconscious in the other room. The son looked at the clock, his voice dropping to a serious whisper. "Today is the 41st day. The deadline the Gharujat Jinn gave us expires tonight. What happens next is entirely in the hands of the Almighty. As night began to fall, the sun ordered everyone to lock the doors and barricade themselves inside the main room. He told them to pray continuously, asking for divine protection from the catastrophic danger heading their way. As the hours passed and the darkness outside grew deeper, the tension inside the house skyrocketed. Everyone was terrified. The Grand Master was barely holding on to his life. Masood was in a coma, and the clock was ticking closer to midnight. And then, the temperature in the room plummeted. The dark, shadowy entity, the Gharujat commander, manifested right in the middle of the room. "Your time is up, cleric," the Jinn announced, its voice echoing with cold authority. "We are taking the baby tonight. Have you found an alternative way to free my master? If you have, tell me, and I will assist you. But if you have not, do not even attempt to stop me from taking this child." The sun stood his ground, looking directly at the towering shadow. "I have found a way," he said firmly. "We are looking for someone who can help. We just haven't made contact with him yet. But we will find him very soon." The Jinn's eyes narrowed. "What way? Who is this person? Tell me quickly." "He is a divinely blessed saint," the sun explained. "His name is Zikir Pagla." The Jinn shook its head. "We do not have time for this. The night is passing. Kalrin has already begun the preparations for the sacrifice. My spies have confirmed it. The execution happens tomorrow. If we do not take this baby tonight and perform the ritual to extract its blood immediately, it will be too late. The child's blood will be useless to us tomorrow. We are taking the baby now, and if you try to interfere, we will be forced to slaughter everyone in this room." The Gharujat Jinn stood towering in the room, its dark presence suffocating. "We are taking the baby," it repeated, its voice devoid of any mercy. "If you try to stop us, we will kill you." A tense, heated argument broke out between the Grand Master's son and the dark entity. The son pleaded with it, trying to buy more time, but the Jinn was absolute in its decision. They had run out of time. Kalrin was going to sacrifice his nephew tomorrow, and they needed Masood's baby tonight to break the curse. Suddenly, a weak, strained voice cut through the argument. Everyone turned their heads. The Grand Master, who had been unconscious and dying from the venom, slowly forced his eyes open. He looked directly at the shadowy entity. "Listen to me," the Grand Master whispered, his voice trembling but filled with conviction. "Your master, Cherin, he is trapped inside the coin, which is inside Masood's body right now. That means he can hear every single word we are saying, correct?" The Jinn remained silent, glaring at the master. "Your master," the Grand Master continued, his voice growing slightly stronger. "He willingly surrendered his entire empire, his throne, and his freedom, just to save the life of his newborn son. He allowed himself to be cursed for eternity to protect his child. But now, to free himself and to save his own son, he is perfectly willing to let this innocent human baby be slaughtered? He is willing to take the life of someone else's child?" The Grand Master locked eyes with the dark entity. "What kind of father is he? A father who sacrifices the life of an innocent baby just to save his own? Is that the honorable emperor you serve? In this fleeting, temporary world, every single creature has both good and evil inside them. But a truly evil father? That is a rare and disgusting thing to find. We told you we found an alternative way. If there was absolutely no other option, maybe I could understand your desperation. But there is hope. Yet, he still wants the blood of this child? What kind of bloodthirsty monster is your master? The exact second those words left the Grand Master's mouth, Masood's body suddenly violently convulsed on the bed. Masood arched his back like a snake, twisting and writhing in sheer, absolute agony. And then, he let out an ear-piercing, blood-curdling scream. It was a scream so loud and so full of raw pain that it didn't even sound human. He had screamed from the pain in his arm before, but never like this. The dark entity suddenly gasped, its shadowy form flickering in absolute panic. "My master!" the Jinn yelled. He forced himself out. The coin had left the human's body. The Grand Master slowly smiled, despite the agonizing pain in his chest. He looked at the Jinn and said, "You wanted to know what a real father looks like? A real father is exactly this. Someone who is willing to give up his empire, his freedom, and even his own life, but refuses to let an innocent child die in his place." Cherin couldn't do it. Hearing the Grand Master's words, the trapped emperor realized the hypocrisy of killing Masood's baby to save his own. Out of pure honor, Cherin used every ounce of his remaining strength to physically reject the human host, spitting the cursed coin out of Masood's flesh, choosing to remain cursed rather than murder an innocent child. The Grand Master, deeply moved by Cherin's sacrifice, looked at the Jinn. "I give you my absolute word," the Master promised. "I will find a way to free Cherin. But you and your kind must swear to stop tormenting and possessing innocent humans." The Jinn looked at the Master. "Free my master first," it replied. "Then, we will give you our word." But right as they were speaking, the Jinn's demeanor suddenly shifted. Pure terror radiated from its shadowy form. "They are here," the Jinn whispered in absolute dread. Calrin, he found out. He allied himself with a faction of rogue, malevolent Egyptian Ifrits. They are marching toward this house right now. They are going to tear this place to the ground and slaughter the baby. Hearing this, the Grand Master's eyes widened. But instead of panicking, a faint knowing smile crossed his face. "Good," he whispered. "The timing is perfect." The Master quickly closed his eyes and began rapidly murmuring a series of highly secretive prayers. Suddenly, a massive roaring gust of wind hit the house. But it didn't come from the storm outside. It felt like a solid wall of pressure slamming into the property from the south. The Grand Master immediately stood up, fighting through the venom in his heart. He walked over to the room where Masood's family had barricaded themselves. He knocked heavily on the door and yelled, "Open the door!" quickly. But the family inside was paralyzed with fear. They refused to open it. Masood's father yelled from inside the room, "Prove it's you. Recite the specific verse from the Holy Book." The Grand Master's son immediately recited the exact verse. Hearing the holy words which an evil entity could never recite, the family finally unlocked the door. The Grand Master walked in, grabbed Masood's baby from the mother's arms, and walked back out. "Lock the door," he commanded, "and do not open it until morning." The Master and his son stood in the main room, holding the baby, waiting outside. The apocalypse began. The storm evolved into an absolute nightmare. The wind tore through the trees, snapping them in half as if they were twigs. The family, huddled inside the locked room, felt the entire house shaking violently. They tried to peek through the cracks in the walls, but it was pitch black outside. And then, the voices started. Over the deafening roar of the hurricane, they heard the sounds of thousands of entities shouting, roaring, and fighting in ancient, incomprehensible languages. It didn't sound like a storm anymore. It sounded like a massive, bloody, supernatural war was being waged right in their front yard. This terrifying chaos raged on for hours. The house shuddered under the immense pressure of the unseen battle. But slowly, eventually, the sounds of war began to fade. The wind died down. The screaming stopped. The night finally ended. When morning broke, the family slowly unlocked the door and stepped outside. The Grand Master and his son were sitting calmly in the front yard. The baby was perfectly safe, sleeping peacefully in the Master's arms. And inside the house, Masood was awake. The coin was gone from his body. He was completely, perfectly healed. The family rushed outside, staring at the destruction in the yard. "Master," they asked, completely stunned. What happened? How did we survive?" The Grand Master smiled softly. "It is over," he said. "Kalrin, the tyrant emperor of the Gharujat, is dead, and his entire army has been completely annihilated." The family was in shock. "But how? Who killed them?" "That massive gust of wind that hit us from the south last night," the Master explained. "That was not a storm, that was an army. The ancient Elder Jinn received my son's message. When he realized that Kalrin had allied with evil rogue Egyptian Ifrits, the Elder Jinn dispatched his own army of righteous Muslim Egyptian Ifrits to intervene." The Master looked up at the sky. The righteous Ifrits arrived just in time. They engaged Kalrin's forces right here, in this yard, and completely decimated them. Kalrin was killed in the battle. The curse is broken. Cherin will be freed. And Masood is finally safe. Guys, what an absolutely insane ride. Just take a second to process everything that happened here. There are some massive, profound lessons buried in this terrifying story. First of all, look at how this entire nightmare started. Masood's life, and his family's lives, were nearly destroyed because of gambling. No matter what belief system you follow, gambling, deceit, and greed always lead down a dark path. Masood gambled away everything he owned, and it directly opened the door for this terrifying entity to enter his life. And secondly, the use of black magic. Look at Kalrin. He was obsessed with power. He used dark, forbidden magic to assassinate his own father. He used a human sorcerer to curse his own brother and kidnap his nephew. He thought dark magic would make him a god. But what was his ultimate fate? It destroyed him. The very darkness he relied on brought an entire army down on his head, and he lost his life, his throne, and his legacy. Dark magic always demands a price you cannot afford to pay. So, my friends, that officially wraps up the second and final part of the Blood Pact, right here on our Horror Night segment. I really hope this story gave you absolute chills and kept you on the edge of your seat. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a massive favor, smash that like button right now. It really helps the channel out. Drop a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. What would you have done if you saw 3 identical versions of your family member fighting in your front yard? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and make sure you turn on the bell notifications so you never miss a horrifying night with us here at the Shadows Prevail. Remember, if you have a true terrifying encounter of your own, you can always send it to us. Write it down, or record a voice note and send it my way. I would love to feature your story in an upcoming episode. Alright listeners, you've heard the story. Now don't forget to press that like button before you leave. And please, share the link to this video with your friends, your family, or anyone who loves a genuinely terrifying true horror story. I am signing off for today's episode. Until next time. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Always watch your back. And good night.